Zuri's blazer clung to her soaked skin, her hands trembling as water dripped down her face. Laughter exploded around her like gunfire, cruel and contagious. Phones were out. Eyes were locked on her. Carson Miller circled like a lion that had cornered its prey. Rich, smirking, and untouchable. Didn't know dirt could scream, he howled. And for a second, Zuri did feel like dirt. Small, broken, helpless. But they didn't know what she did at 4:30 every morning. They didn't know who she became when she gripped cold steel. And they definitely didn't know what was about to be unleashed. Quick heads up before we dive in, what city are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? I'm always curious where these stories travel. Drop it in the comments. Now, today's story is wild. A quiet girl gets humiliated by rich bullies, until the truth about who she really is changes everything. If you love stories that flip the script, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The alarm blared at 4:30 a.m., and Zuri Jameson's hand shot out from under her comforter to silence it. Outside, darkness still blanketed the world, but Zuri had miles to go before the sun would rise. Her feet hit the cold floor as she pulled on her baggy sweats, clothes that hid rather than revealed. She moved quietly, careful not to wake her mother who'd worked a double shift at Memorial Hospital. On her bedroom wall hung medals and trophies, gleaming even in the dim light her secret treasures. National Junior Powerlifting Championships. Read the circled date on her calendar. Just 6 weeks away. At Ironside Gym, the heavy metal door creaked open, releasing a cloud of chalk dust into the morning air. Inside, the clang of weights and smell of sweat greeted her like an old friend. There she is, Coach Davis nodded, his massive frame silhouetted against the weight racks. 350 today.
No excuses.
Zuri nodded, pulling her hair back tight. When she wrapped her hands around the barbell, something changed in her eyes. Here, in this gritty basement gym miles from Westlake Preparatory Academy, she wasn't the scholarship girl who didn't belong. She was simply strong. The weights rose from the ground, trembling against gravity's pull as veins popped on her forehead. Coach Davis counted quietly, 1, 2, 3, until the bar settled back with a thunderous clang. Beast mode, he said simply, a rare smile crossing his weathered face. Later, at 7:45 a.m., Zuri entered a different world. Westlake Prep loomed with its manicured lawns and stone columns, a place where money spoke louder than merit. She tugged her uniform blazer tighter, trying to disappear inside it. "Hey, Jameson," a voice called out, but Zuri kept walking head down. In class, she took notes diligently, raising her hand only when she knew the answer without doubt. Lunch period arrived, and she found her usual corner table, alone with her packed lunch and physics textbook. Across the cafeteria sat Carson Miller and Aiden Phillips, sons of tech moguls and the school's unofficial royalty. Their laughter carried, sharp and cutting, across the room. Occasionally, their eyes would land on Zuri, and their smiles would turn predatory. "Scholarship cases shouldn't take up so much space," Carson had once said within her hearing. At home that evening, Zuri helped her mother set the table, the two of them moving in practiced harmony. "How was school, baby?" her mother asked, dark circles under her eyes but smile still warm. "Same as always," Zuri answered. What she didn't say was how she counted the minutes until she could return to Ironside Gym. The only place her size was her strength, not her shame. What she didn't mention was the churning dread that filled her stomach each morning as she approached Westlake's gates. What she couldn't know was how tomorrow would change everything. The courtyard at Westlake gleamed under the spring sun. Students sprawled across benches enjoying their lunch break. Zuri sat alone beneath an oak tree, a physics textbook propped against her knees. The shade felt safe until she heard snickering. She looked up just as the first water balloon exploded against her chest. Cold water soaked through her white uniform shirt, making it instantly transparent. A second balloon hit her face before she could react. Direct hit. Carson Miller's voice rang out, high-fiving Aiden Phillips as they circled her like wolves. Both wore the same designer shoes that cost more than her mother made in a week. Students turned to watch. Some laughed. Most just stared. Phones came out, recording. Didn't know dirt could scream, Carson shouted when Zuri finally found her voice, a raw, wounded sound that tore from her throat as colored water dripped down her face and neck. Through blurry eyes, she spotted Marcus Washington watching from the steps, his face frozen in shock. He took a half step forward, then stopped when Carson's friends moved closer to Zuri. "What's happening here?" Miss Peterson's voice cut through the laughter as the English teacher rushed forward. But the damage was done. Zuri's books were soaked, her dignity in puddles at her feet. In Principal Harrington's office, justice evaporated like the water drying on Zuri's skin. "Boys will be boys," Harrington sighed, looking uncomfortably at Zuri's still wet uniform. "They'll serve detention this Friday." "Their parents donated the science wing," Zuri said flatly. "That's why they only got detention." Harrington's mouth tightened. "That's quite an accusation, Miss Jameson. Remember, your scholarship requires exemplary behavior." The threat hung in the air. Zuri bit her tongue until she tasted blood. She sat through afternoon classes in her wet clothes, shivering as air conditioning blasted against her skin. The video was already circulating. She saw it on a classmate's phone. Her mouth open in that horrible scream, her body looking huge and helpless. At home, she finally broke. Her mother held her as sobs wrenched through her body. "They made me feel so small, Mama," she whispered. "So weak." Her mother's hands, calloused from years of nursing, cupped Zuri's face. "Baby, you are neither small nor weak. Those boys have never worked for anything in their lives." That night, Zuri stared at her powerlifting medals glinting in the moonlight. At school, she carried her size like a burden. At the gym, it was her weapon. Tomorrow, she decided something would change. She was tired of hiding her strength. As she drifted to sleep, her phone lit up with a notification. The video had gone viral beyond Westlake. Beneath it, comments piled up like stones. "Damn, she's huge. Why do whales leave the ocean?" Someone called Greenpeace. But there was another comment, from an anonymous account. "They have no idea who they're messing with." Zuri's eyes narrowed in the darkness. How did someone know? Who else was watching? The barbell bent slightly under the weight plates, 375 pounds. Personal record attempt. Sweat beaded on Zuri's forehead as she gripped the cold metal, the chalk on her hands leaving ghostly prints. "Channel it," Coach Davis said quietly. "Everything you're feeling, put it in your hands." Zuri closed her eyes, seeing Carson's smirking face, feeling the wet clothes clinging to her skin, hearing the laughter. Her eyes snapped open. She pulled. The bar rose inch by excruciating inch until she stood fully upright, trembling with effort but triumphant. "That's a new PR." Coach's voice cracked with pride as she dropped the weights with a thunderous crash. "Something happened," she admitted afterward, showing him the viral video on her phone. Coach's weathered face darkened. "Miller's kid," he muttered. "Should have known." "You know Carson's father?" "Everyone in this city knows Richard Miller," Coach said grimly. "Back in the day, he was just like his son, born on third base thinking he hit a triple." At school, Zuri walked differently, chin higher. The whispers still followed her, but something had shifted inside. When Carson and his friends made whale noises as she passed, she stopped and looked directly at them. Really looked, until Carson's smile faltered. "Zuri?" A voice called as she headed to lunch. Marcus Washington jogged to catch up, his camera bag bouncing against his hip. "Can I talk to you?" They sat at her usual corner table, Marcus fidgeting with his napkin. "I should have done something yesterday."
"I'm sorry."
Zuri studied him, his earnest eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "Why do you care now?" "I've always noticed you," he admitted. "You're different. Not just because," he gestured vaguely at her size, "but you seem stronger somehow. Inside." Zuri felt something unfamiliar, the desire to reveal rather than conceal. She pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a video from her last competition. In it, she deadlifted 350 pounds while the crowd roared. Marcus's jaw dropped. "Holy, I'm competing at nationals next month," she said. "No one here knows except you now. This is incredible, Marcus breathed, a slow smile spreading across his face. You know what this means? Those idiots picked on exactly the wrong person. For the first time in days, Zuri laughed. I've been hiding who I am for so long. I almost forgot myself. Why hide it? Zuri gestured around at Westlake's pristine cafeteria. Look around. This place values a certain kind of girl. Thin, pretty, rich. I'm none of those things. But you're strong as hell, Marcus countered. That has to be worth something. Maybe it's time to find out, Zuri said, something resolute settling in her chest. Later that day, Ms. Peterson held her after English class. I saw something different in you today, Zuri. I made a decision, Zuri replied. I'm done being invisible. Ms. Peterson smiled. Good, because I was thinking the Student Achievement Assembly next week. Would you consider presenting your powerlifting accomplishments? Zuri hesitated, then nodded slowly. I think I would. As she left school that afternoon, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nice lift yesterday morning. Very impressive. The sinking feeling in Zuri's stomach was immediate. Someone at Westlake knew about her training. But who? And were they friend or enemy? The whispers started small, a curious glance in the hallway, a double take during gym class. Someone had talked. By Thursday, rumors about Zuri's secret life swirled through Westlake's halls like autumn leaves. I heard she can lift a car, a freshman whispered. My brother trains at Ironside. Says she's going to nationals, another replied. Carson and Aiden intensified their campaign. The water balloon video became a meme with crude captions. When Zuri opened her locker, paper cutouts of whales fluttered to the floor. Each attack left a mark, but she kept her eyes fixed on what mattered. They're scared, Marcus said as they walked to class. Over the past week, he'd become a constant presence at her side. You threaten their whole worldview. How? I'm still the scholarship kid they love to hate. But you're strong. Literally stronger than any guy at this school. That terrifies them. Ms. Peterson had submitted Zuri's name for the upcoming Student Achievement Assembly. Principal Harrington approved it with obvious reluctance, his email noting that all presentations must uphold Westlake standards of excellence. Meanwhile, Marcus had begun joining Zuri at Ironside Gym, his camera capturing her training from respectful distances. A documentary, he explained, if you don't mind, about breaking stereotypes. As long as I get final approval, Zuri had answered, surprised by her own willingness to be seen. At home, Zuri's mother noticed the change immediately. You're walking taller, she observed one evening. Something's different. I'm just tired of hiding, Mama. Her mother squeezed her hand. About time. The stakes rose unexpectedly when Zuri discovered the national competition would be held at Westlake's state-of-the-art athletic facility, sponsored by Miller Technologies. Carson's father was the primary benefactor. Did you know about this? She demanded of Coach Davis, showing him the updated competition website. Found out yesterday, he admitted. Doesn't change anything. You lift the weight, you win. Simple. But nothing was simple anymore. The competition's proximity meant more Westlake students would attend. Her worlds were colliding at increasing speed. Friday morning, Zuri found Aiden alone at his locker. Without his usual audience, he seemed smaller somehow. Why do you follow Carson around like a shadow? She asked bluntly. Aiden flinched. You don't know anything about me. I know you only bully people when he's watching. Something flashed in his eyes, shame, maybe. We're not all born perfect. Perfect. Zuri laughed. Have you seen me? The world's been telling me I'm wrong my whole life. At least you're good at something, he muttered, then slammed his locker shut and walked away. Later that day, Zuri finalized her presentation for Monday's assembly, her stomach knotting with equal parts dread and determination. She'd chosen footage that showed her lifting weights that would make most grown men crumble. That night, she received an anonymous text. They're planning something for the assembly. Be careful. Zuri stared at her phone, heart pounding. The warning felt sincere. But from whom? She suspected Marcus. But when she texted him, he denied sending it. Someone else was watching, someone who knew what Carson was plotting. The weekend passed in a blur of training and preparation. Monday morning dawned bright and clear, the day of the assembly, of revelation, of risk. Ready or not, Zuri whispered to her reflection. Here I come. The auditorium hummed with restless energy as students filed in for the achievement assembly. Zuri sat backstage, stomach churning as she reviewed her notes one last time. Her PowerPoint showed her competitive journey, from novice to national qualifier. The final slide displayed her personal best lift, 375 pounds. You've got this, Marcus whispered, squeezing her shoulder before joining the audience. Principal Harrington clicked through presentations. Debate team victories, science fair winners, chess tournament champions. Finally, he announced, next, we have Zuri Jameson presenting her athletic achievements. His pause spoke volumes. Zuri took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes tracking her movements. She plugged in her flash drive, cleared her throat, and began. My name is Zuri Jameson, and I'm a powerlifter. The first slide appeared Zuri in her lifting belt and chalk-covered hands. A few snickers rippled through the audience. She continued steadily, explaining the sports disciplines and her 3-year journey. Just as she reached the slide about her qualification for nationals, the screen flickered. Suddenly, instead of her powerlifting stats, the water balloon video filled the giant screen. Zuri soaking wet, mouth open in that horrible scream. Audio blasted through the speakers. Didn't know dirt could scream. Laughter erupted. Zuri froze, humiliation washing over her in waves. From the front row, Carson and his friends high-fived each other. Principal Harrington hurried toward the AV booth, but the damage was done. Tears threatened, but Zuri blinked them back. She glanced stage left, catching Ms. Peterson's encouraging nod. Then she saw Marcus standing up in the middle of the audience. Beside him, another student rose. Then another. Mostly outsiders like her, the scholarship kids, the misfits, the invisible ones. Zuri squared her shoulders. As I was saying, she said into the microphone, her voice stronger than she felt, I've qualified for the National Junior Powerlifting Championships. The video finally cut out. Zuri quickly advanced to her final slides, footage of her deadlifting 375 pounds at Ironside. The room fell silent as they watched her lift a weight that would crush most of them. As the video ended, a strange quiet filled the auditorium. Even Carson looked stunned. Then Principal Harrington stepped forward, face tight with false concern. Thank you, Miss Jameson. I'm afraid we're running behind schedule. Next presenter, please. The dismissal was unmistakable. Zuri unplugged her flash drive with trembling fingers and walked off stage, legs wobbly. In the hallway, Ms. Peterson caught up with her. That was incredibly brave, Zuri. It didn't change anything, Zuri whispered, the momentary strength evaporating. They still laughed. He still cut me off. You showed them who you really are. That always changes things. After school, Zuri avoided the usual exits, sneaking out through the gym. But Carson and his friends were waiting. Nice show, Hulk, Carson called out. Didn't know they had weight classes for elephants. Something inside Zuri snapped. 3 years of hiding, of shrinking herself, of swallowing her power, gone in an instant. She walked straight up to Carson, stopping inches from his face. You think you're untouchable because your daddy buys your way out of everything, she said, voice low and steady. But money can't buy strength, or character, or talent. Carson's smirk faltered. Whatever, charity case. Enjoy your little barbell hobby while you can. What's that supposed to mean? It means my father doesn't like the optics of having freaks represent his competition. Carson's smile returned, colder now. The committee's already talking about disqualification, character concerns. Zuri stepped back, gut punched. You can't do that. Already done, Carson replied. That's the difference between us, Jameson. You lift weights. My family moves them. As Carson walked away, Zuri stood frozen, the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything she'd worked for threatened because she dared to be seen. Behind her, unnoticed, Aiden lingered, his expression troubled as he watched her world crumble. The news hit like a wrecking ball the next morning. Coach Davis called before dawn, his voice tight with anger. "The committee's reviewing your eligibility," he confirmed. "Miller's pushing for disqualification based on conduct unbecoming of a competitor. They're using that damn video." Zuri sat on her bed, phone pressed to her ear, as the room spun around her. Can they do that? They shouldn't, but with Miller's sponsorship money. Coach's voice trailed off. "We'll fight it, Zuri. I promise." At school, whispers followed her through the halls. Some mocking, others surprisingly supportive. The assembly had changed something. She wasn't invisible anymore, for better or worse. In English class, Ms. Peterson returned their essays. On Zuri's paper, beneath her A grade, a note read, "Office hours today? Important news." Later, in Ms. Peterson's empty classroom, the teacher closed the door and spoke in hushed tones. The video hijacking was traced to the AV booth. Carson and 2 others. They should be expelled. "But they won't be," Zuri said flatly. Principal Harrington's recommended 1-day suspensions. Ms. Peterson's mouth tightened. "Carson's father called this morning." "Of course he did." Zuri stared out the window where students crossed the perfectly manicured quad. "Now they're trying to get me disqualified from nationals." "I heard." Ms. Peterson nodded grimly. "That's why I wanted to talk. I'm organizing a petition. Other teachers are on board. Parents too. Why would you risk that for me?" Ms. Peterson's eyes softened. "Because some things matter more than job security, Zuri. Like showing students that strength comes in all forms." That afternoon, Zuri dragged herself to Ironside, but her heart wasn't in training. She failed lifts she'd managed easily for months. "Your body's fine," Coach said after her 3rd miss. "It's your head that's messed up. How am I supposed to focus when they're taking everything away?" Zuri's voice cracked. "Maybe I should just quit." Coach's weathered face hardened. 30 years coaching. And that's the most disappointing thing I've ever heard. The word stung like a slap. Zuri blinked back hot tears. "You think I never faced this?" Coach continued. "Black man in a white sport? They tried everything to keep me out." He pointed to an old photo on the wall, himself as a younger man, lifting on an international stage. "They only have power if you give it to them." Zuri left training early, wandering aimlessly until she found herself at the park. She sat watching children play, their movements unselfconscious and free. Her phone buzzed with texts from her mother, from Marcus, from Miss Peterson, all checking on her. She ignored them all. As dusk fell, her phone rang again. Unknown number. Reluctantly, she answered. "Is this Zuri?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "Who's asking?" "Diana Miller, Carson's mother." Zuri nearly dropped the phone. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I saw what happened at that assembly," Diana said, her voice calm but edged with something like regret. "And I need you to know, not everyone in the Miller family thinks alike." "What does that mean?" "It means I've seen the competition footage my husband is trying to suppress. You have remarkable talent, Zuri. And my son's behavior was inexcusable." Zuri's mind raced, searching for the trap. "Why tell me this?" "Because I recognize what it costs to be different in spaces that weren't built for you." A pause. "The committee meets tomorrow. I can't promise anything, but I've made some calls." After they hung up, Zuri sat in the gathering darkness, feeling the ground shift once again. At home, she found Marcus waiting on her porch with his laptop. "I've been calling you for hours," he said, relief and frustration mixing in his voice. "I need to show you something." He opened his computer, revealing the documentary he'd been editing, Weight of Expectations. The footage contrasted Westlake's polished veneer with the raw power of Ironside Gym, Carson's bullying with Zuri's discipline. "It's not finished," Marcus explained, "but I submitted a rough cut to the Student Film Festival. They want to feature it on opening night, this Friday." Zuri stared at freeze frames of herself, chalk-covered hands, determined eyes, the bar bending across her shoulders. For the first time, she saw what others might see. Not just size, but strength. Not just difference, but power. I don't know if I'll even be competing after tomorrow, she said quietly. Then this matters even more, Marcus insisted, taking her hand. Whether you compete or not, people should see the truth. That night, Zuri couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, strangers would decide her fate based on a distorted story. Her phone buzzed with one last message from Coach Davis. Committee meeting, 3 p.m., Miller Building. Be there. The challenge was clear. Would she show up to fight for her place? Or disappear as they expected her to? Dawn broke with Zuri still awake, her decision made. Zuri stood outside the Miller Technologies headquarters, a gleaming glass tower that seemed to touch the clouds. Inside, the competition committee was already gathering, 12 people who would decide if her strength was worth seeing. You came. Coach Davis appeared beside her, his massive frame somehow comforting. Almost didn't, Zuri admitted. But you're here. That's half the battle. They weren't alone. To Zuri's astonishment, a small crowd had gathered at the building's entrance. Ms. Peterson stood with several Westlake teachers. Marcus was there with his camera. Even a few students Zuri barely knew held handmade signs. Let her lift, and strength isn't just for the rich. What is this? Zuri whispered. Support, Ms. Peterson said simply. The petition gathered over 500 signatures overnight. Inside, the committee members sat around a polished conference table, Richard Miller at its head. His resemblance to Carson was striking, the same cold eyes, the same entitled posture. Miss Jameson, he began without preamble. We're reviewing your eligibility due to concerns about conduct unbecoming of a competitor. Coach Davis started to speak, but Zuri touched his arm. This was her fight. The video you're basing this on shows me being assaulted, she said, her voice steadier than her pounding heart. If that's unbecoming conduct, I'd like to understand how. Richard Miller's jaw tightened. The committee has concerns about your temperament. My temperament? Zuri interrupted, heat rising in her chest. Your son attacked me. He hijacked a school assembly to humiliate me. And you're questioning my temperament. Young lady, I've spent 3 years training while maintaining a 4.0 GPA on scholarship. I've never missed a meet, never failed a drug test, never behaved with anything but respect for this sport. Richard's face darkened. This isn't about my son. It's exactly about your son. A new voice interrupted. Diana Miller stood in the doorway, elegant in a tailored suit. And about you protecting him instead of protecting this sport's integrity. The room fell silent. Diana walked to the table, placing a file before the committee members. Zuri Jameson's competitive record, her academic achievements, letters from her coach and teachers. She turned to face her husband. If we disqualify her, we're sending a message that money matters more than merit. Is that the company legacy you want, Richard? Outside the window, the small protest had grown. News vans had arrived, cameras pointing toward the building. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Richard Miller's face. We'll need to deliberate privately. In the hallway, Diana approached Zuri. I can't guarantee anything, she said quietly. But sometimes people need to see themselves clearly to make the right choice. 20 minutes later, the decision came: Zuri would compete. The victory felt hollow somehow. Not because it wasn't important. It was everything. But because Zuri realized something profound in that sterile conference room. She'd been fighting for external validation again, seeking permission to be herself. No more. That afternoon, she headed not to Ironside but home, finding her mother sorting through old photo albums. Baby? Her mother looked up, concern etching her features. I heard about the committee. I'm so proud. I almost quit, Mama, Zuri interrupted, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I was ready to give up everything I've worked for because some rich kids made me feel worthless. Her mother set down the album and took Zuri's hands, her eyes fierce with love. Listen to me. Your worth isn't in their hands. It never was. They can't take what you don't give them. The photo album lay open to pictures of Zuri as a small child, fearless, joyful, unapologetic in her existence. Before the world taught her to shrink. "I want to feel like that again," Zuri whispered, touching the photos. "Like nothing can stop me." Her mother's smile was gentle but knowing. "Then stop waiting for permission to be magnificent." That night, Zuri reopened her training journal, planning the final weeks before nationals. But this time, she wrote a new goal at the top. "Lift for myself. Not for them. Not against them. For me." Friday evening arrived, the Student Film Festival. Marcus's documentary premiered to a packed auditorium, much larger than he'd expected. When the lights dimmed and weight of expectations appeared on screen, Zuri held her breath. For 30 minutes, her story unfolded, not just of bullying, but of resilience. Not just of struggle, but of power chosen and claimed. When the credits rolled, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Afterward, as people crowded around Marcus with congratulations, Zuri noticed Aiden standing alone near the exit. "You were the one who warned me," she realized suddenly. "About the assembly, the anonymous text." Aiden looked away. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Why?" His shoulders slumped. "Because I know what it's like when everyone decides who you are without asking." Before she could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. 2 weeks until nationals. Zuri returned to training with renewed purpose, not just accepting her strength but embracing it fully. The weight she'd been carrying wasn't her size or others' opinions. It was the exhaustion of hiding her power. It was time to put that weight down and pick up another. The national championship dawned clear and cold. Westlake's athletic complex buzzed with activity as competitors from across the country arrived. Banners bearing the Miller Technologies logo hung from every wall, a reminder of whose territory this was. In the warm-up area, Zuri rolled her shoulders, focused inward. The past weeks had transformed her. Training had never been more intense, each session pushing beyond what she thought possible. Her qualifying total put her among the top 3 in her weight class medal contention. "How's it feel?" Coach Davis asked as she chalked her hands. "Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The truth of those words resonated through her body. For the first time in years, she felt whole, no part of herself hidden or diminished. Outside, the stands filled quickly. Marcus had secured a prime position for filming. Ms. Peterson sat with a group of teachers and students wearing handmade Team Zuri shirts. Even Diana Miller was present, seated notably apart from her husband in the VIP section. Carson was there too, his presence required as the sponsor's son. He looked uncomfortable, caught between his father's expectations and the shifting social dynamics at school. Since the assembly and committee hearing, his usual swagger had dimmed. The crown sits uneasy when its power is questioned. As her weight class was called, Zuri approached the platform for her opening squat. 3 white lights for a successful lift. She nodded, feeling the familiar calm that competition brought, the world narrowing to just her and the bar. Between attempts, she noticed Aiden watching from the stands, neither with Carson nor with her supporters. A lonely middle ground. The competition progressed through squats and bench press. Zuri hit all her attempts, staying neck and neck with a powerlifter from Texas. With deadlifts remaining her strongest event, a podium finish seemed certain. During the brief break before deadlifts, Richard Miller made his way to the warm-up area, his presence parting the crowd. "Impressive performance," he said, voice carefully neutral. "You've clearly trained well." Zuri measured her response. "Thank you for allowing me to compete, Mr. Miller." "The committee made that decision," he replied smoothly. "I simply respect their judgment." They both knew it was a lie, but Zuri let it pass. Some battles weren't worth fighting today. As she turned back to her preparation, Carson appeared beside his father. For a moment their eyes met. No smirk now, no cruel joke. Just a boy realizing his world was larger and more complex than he'd imagined. The deadlift round began. Zuri's first attempt, 335 pounds, rose smoothly. Her second, 355, slightly harder but still controlled. She stood in second place with 1 lift remaining. 375, she told the official. It would be a junior national record if successful. As she approached the platform for her final lift, a hush fell over the crowd. This weight would not just secure a medal. It would make history for her age and weight class. Chalk dust clouded around her hands as she approached the loaded bar. In that moment, she felt every eye in the arena. Supporters, doubters, enemies, friends. But none of that mattered now. She gripped the bar, set her position, and took a deep breath. The weight felt impossible as she initiated the pull. For a heart-stopping moment, the bar barely moved. Somewhere in the crowd, she heard her mother's voice. "You got this, baby." Muscle and bone and heart strained against gravity. The bar inched upward, past her knees, then her thighs. Pain shot through her lower back as she approached lockout. 3 years of 4:30 a.m. wake-ups. Countless hours under the bar. Every dismissive glance, every cruel comment, every moment of doubt. All converted to fuel for this single moment of truth. With a final surge, Zuri straightened fully. The bar secured at hip level, her face a mask of effort and triumph. 3 white lights. National record. The crowd erupted. Coach Davis pumped his fist in the air. Marcus captured it all on camera, his own face wet with tears. As the medal ceremony began, Zuri climbed to the second highest podium step. Silver medal. National record holder. When Richard Miller stepped forward to present the medals, his corporate obligation as sponsor, their eyes met again. "Congratulations, Miss Jameson," he said, placing the medal around her neck. Flash bulbs captured the moment. The powerful businessman honoring the girl his son had tormented. Zuri accepted the medal with quiet dignity. "Thank you, Mr. Miller." As she stepped down from the podium, swimmers and surrounded by well-wishers, Carson approached. He stood awkwardly, hands shoved in his pockets. "That was impressive," he managed, eyes not quite meeting hers. "Was there something else you wanted to say?" Zuri asked. Carson's face worked through several emotions before settling on something like resignation.
"I'm sorry."
"For everything. It was—" He struggled for words. "Wrong." The apology was imperfect, perhaps coerced by his mother or by social pressure. But it was a beginning. "I appreciate that," Zuri said simply. Neither forgiveness nor rejection, just acknowledgement. Some bridges would take longer to build, if they were built at all. As the crowds began to disperse, Zuri found herself surrounded by her true community, her mother's fierce embrace, Coach Davis's proud nod, Marcus's camera capturing it all, Miss Peterson's tears of joy, and the Westlake students who had chosen to support her. In that circle of celebration, with silver gleaming against her chest, Zuri finally understood. Her strength had never been just physical. It was in her persistence, her resilience, her refusal to be defined by others' limitations. The real victory wasn't the medal. It was standing fully in her power, visible at last. 1 year later, Zuri Jameson returned to Ironside Gym, a gold medal hanging beside the silver in her bedroom. National champion now, her name in record books, her future bright with possibility. The gym had changed, new equipment, fresh paint, a larger sign outside. Ironside Strength Academy, Coach Davis and Coach Jameson, it read in bold letters. Inside, a group of girls waited nervously, all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds. Some from Westlake, others from public schools across the city. All drawn by the story of a girl who turned bullying into triumph. "Welcome to your first powerlifting class," Zuri greeted them, confidence flowing through her voice. "I'm Coach Jameson." The transformation went beyond titles. Zuri stood taller now, her Westlake blazer replaced by coaching gear bearing the Ironside logo. Her scholarship had become a full athletic ride to State University, where she'd continue competing while studying sports psychology. The documentary Weight of Expectations had won the Regional Student Film Festival, launching Marcus's career. Now expanded into a feature, it was being screened at independent theaters and sports conferences nationwide. Their relationship had deepened too, from allies to best friends to something more, growing steadily like her strength, built on a foundation of true seeing. Westlake itself had undergone changes. Principal Harrington resigned following an investigation into disciplinary disparities between wealthy students and scholarship recipients. Ms. Peterson now served as interim principal, implementing policies that valued character alongside achievement. As for Carson Miller, the fall from social dominance had been educational. No longer automatically at the top of every hierarchy, he was learning to exist in a world where money couldn't buy respect. Diana Miller had taken a more active role in the Family Foundation, shifting its focus toward educational equity and youth sports programs, including a scholarship for powerlifters from underrepresented backgrounds. The most surprising transformation came from Aiden Phillips. After anonymous support turned to tentative allyship, he'd found his own voice. Now he volunteered at Ironside, helping with the website and social media. His friendship with Zuri remained complicated but genuine, two people who'd learned that identity isn't fixed, that strength comes in many forms. First thing you need to know, Zuri told her nervous students, is that your body is not your enemy. It's your instrument, your power source. She moved between them, adjusting forms, offering encouragement. These girls reminded her of herself a year ago, hiding their potential, believing the limits others placed on them. Second thing, she continued, is that no one can take your power unless you give it away. The bar doesn't care who your parents are, what you look like, or what anyone says about you. It only responds to effort and heart. A small commotion at the door drew her attention. Her mother arrived, still in nursing scrubs, beaming with pride as she watched her daughter teach. Beside her stood Coach Davis, arms folded, nodding approval at his protege-turned-partner. Later, after class ended, Zuri sat with her mother on the gym steps, watching the sunset paint the sky in triumphant colors. "Remember when you used to hide your medals?" her mother asked. Zuri nodded, remembering the girl who'd believed her size was something to overcome rather than a source of strength. "I spent so much time trying to be invisible. And now look at you, helping others be seen." The Jameson Women's Powerlifting Scholarship, funded by Zuri's growing sponsorships, would send its first recipient to college next fall. The cycle of opportunity continuing, strength building strength. "You know what I tell them?" Zuri said, watching her students leave with newly straightened spines and lifted chins. "That water can wash away chalk, but it can't wash away who you really are." Her mother squeezed her hand, understanding the reference to that day in the courtyard, the moment that had seemed like an ending but was actually a beginning. As twilight deepened, Zuri's phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Documentary screening packed tonight. Saved you a seat." Attached was a photo of the theater marquee. "Weight of expectations. The story of strength beyond measure." Zuri smiled, feeling the future expand before her like weights on a bar. Challenging but possible, heavy with potential. Some loads are worth carrying, she'd learned. Some weights build exactly the strength you need. Rising from the steps, medal winner and record breaker, coach and student, daughter and friend, Zuri Jameson walked toward the waiting world, each step grounded in the power she'd always possessed but finally claimed as her own. Would you have accepted Carson's apology, or made him pay more for what he did? Leave your answer in the comments. I read everyone. And let's be honest, if you made it to the end, you're one of us. This channel is where unforgettable stories live, so don't forget to subscribe. Ready for another story that'll leave your jaw on the floor? Click and keep watching.